My parents always favored my sister and let her humiliate me publicly. Why are you even here? My sister laughed at my graduation. Everyone wishes you'd just disappear, my dad said. That night, I packed my bags and left without saying goodbye. A few years ago at my college graduation, my sister looked me in the eye and laughed, "Why are you even here?" A few minutes later, my father muttered, "Everyone wishes you'd just disappear." That night, I packed up and left without saying goodbye. I haven't spoken to my family since. Now they're reaching out after a health crisis, and I don't know what to feel. Do I respond? Do I forgive? My earliest memories are quiet, not because my house was peaceful, but because I was always observing, waiting, hoping, bracing. We lived in Boise, Idaho, on a street where all the houses looked like the same model in slightly different colors. The inside of our house was cold, but not in a temperature way. It was the kind of cold you feel in your chest when you're not welcome, when you're the extra body at the table no one wants to acknowledge. My sister Camille was born just 11 months before me. Technically Irish twins, but in every other way, we were opposites. She had blonde curls, blue eyes, and a natural charisma that drew people in. I was dark-haired, introverted, bookish. Camille was everyone's favorite from the day I was born, especially our parents, Paul and Cheryl. I can't point to a single moment where things turned sour between me and my family because it was always like that. Camille could do no wrong. When she knocked over a glass of juice, it was a cute accident. When I spilled something, I was careless. Camille could interrupt conversations, make fun of people, and still be praised for her spark. I learned early to stay small, speak softly, and never expect applause. It only got worse as we got older. Camille developed early, physically and socially. She had friends, admirers, a rotating cast of boyfriends. Meanwhile, I read books in the library during lunch and tried to avoid eye contact with anyone who might ask me why I was so quiet. Camille mocked me constantly, calling me Wednesday Addams, Gloom Girl, and later, Charcoal. She once called me an extra in her movie while we were at a family barbecue. My dad laughed so hard he nearly dropped his beer. My mom smiled like it was clever. I was 13. I tried. I really did. I brought home awards, made honor rolls every semester, and got into AP classes. But nothing ever got more than a distracted good job or a "can you help Camille with her math?" I wasn't a person to them. I was a benchmark to make Camille feel better. Things hit a weird lull when I turned 16 and got a job at a used bookstore downtown. It became my only safe place. The owner, Mr. Kellner, was a retired English professor who took me seriously. He read my stories, recommended books, and told me I had an observant mind. No one had ever said anything like that to me before. At home, things were stagnant but predictable. Camille started slipping, bad grades, drama with friends, caught sneaking out. Still, the excuses came: she's under pressure, she's misunderstood, teenage girls can be hard. When I turned 18, I got a partial scholarship to the University of Oregon and filled in the rest with savings and student loans. I told my parents I was leaving. They said, "Well, Camille needs the car for work, so you'll have to figure something out." So I did. I caught a ride with a friend from the bookstore who was heading north. I packed everything I owned into 2 duffel bags. My parents didn't come out to say goodbye. Camille was asleep. I thrived in college. It wasn't easy. I worked multiple jobs, shared rooms with strangers, and lived off canned soup, but I was free. For the first time, I wasn't being compared to anyone. My professors noticed me. I found friends who liked my quiet. I began writing again. Then graduation came. 4 years have passed since I left home. I didn't invite them. They showed up anyway. It was bright that day, a rare sun-soaked June morning in Eugene. As we waited outside the stadium, I spotted them. My mom in an overdone sundress, Dad in a golf polo, and Camille looking like she was heading to a rooftop party, not a graduation. They barely said hi. Camille looked me up and down, smirked, and said, "Why are you even here?" before laughing and turning to scroll on her phone. My dad, without even looking at me, muttered, "Everyone wishes you'd just disappear." I didn't react. I think I expected it. That night, I left my own party. My roommate had planned a little get-together, and I made an excuse, slipped out, and drove away with my diploma in the back seat. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I landed in Bellingham, Washington. It was quiet, green, rainy, everything I wanted. I got a job with a local nonprofit doing environmental advocacy and slowly built a life that felt like mine. No comparisons, no biting comments, no one laughing when I spoke. I changed my phone number, deleted social media, and never reached out. I didn't hate them, I just needed silence. Peace. I had spent my entire life being the lesser one. I didn't want to be seen that way ever again. 3 years passed. I met someone, Nico. He was gentle, patient, and endlessly curious. A wildlife photographer who didn't need big parties or noise. We met on a hike, of all things, when I twisted my ankle and he helped me limp back to the trailhead. Nico never pried. He could tell I had history, but he let me talk when I wanted. I told him bits and pieces. He didn't offer cheap sympathy or ask why I didn't just move on. He just listened. We bought a little cabin near Mount Baker, a fixer-upper, but it felt like the first place I could breathe. And then, out of nowhere, a letter came. No return address. Just my name. Inside, my father's handwriting. "Camille's in rehab. Your mother had a stroke. I know you probably don't care, but I thought you should know. I regret a lot. I just wish we could talk." Dad, I read it 3 times. Then a 4th. Nico watched me from the kitchen, quietly making tea. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I felt numb. They were reaching out. After all this time. After all the silence. After the public humiliation, the years of emotional neglect, the absolute dismissal of my humanity, they wanted to talk. And now I don't know what to do. I kept the letter on the kitchen counter for days. Didn't touch it, didn't reread it, didn't say anything to Nico about it after that first evening. He never brought it up again either, just quietly went about his day, giving me space like he always did. Every morning I'd walk by it, sip my coffee, glance at the envelope like it was some sleeping animal I didn't want to disturb. The weirdest part wasn't the fact that they'd written. It was that for the first time, they hadn't demanded anything. No guilt trip. No, "you should be here," or "this is what family does." Just a flat statement: Camille was in rehab, Mom had a stroke, and my dad regretted a lot. It rattled me more than I wanted to admit. Because I had imagined that moment, what I'd say if they ever reached out. I used to fantasize about it in college. I'd picture them groveling, crying, telling me they were wrong. And in every fantasy, I'd rise above, offer them grace and forgiveness, and walk away feeling vindicated. But now that it was real, I didn't feel powerful. I just felt hollow and tired. I didn't hate them. I honestly didn't. I just didn't know them anymore. And I wasn't sure I ever really had. Most people don't understand what it's like to be emotionally orphaned while still living under the same roof as your family. How alienating it is to watch your parents beam with pride at your sibling while they look through you like you're just passing through. How painful it is to hear them laugh when your sister publicly mocks you, and how quickly you learn to stop expecting anything from anyone. People say, "But they're your family," like that's a magic spell. Like those words should erase years of being made to feel invisible. But family means nothing if there's no safety, no love, no care. A week passed. The letter was still on the counter. I started dreaming about them again, old memories, strange mashups of past and present. In one dream, I was back at that graduation, except I was the only one who showed up. Camille was in the audience, but she didn't laugh. She just stared at me with tears in her eyes. My dad was clapping in slow motion, and my mom looked Old. Fragile. I woke up with a weird pit in my stomach. I didn't talk to Nico about the dream. I just got dressed and went for a long walk through the wooded trails behind our cabin. The sun was barely peeking through the clouds, and the trees were dripping with last night's rain. It was quiet, except for the occasional bird call. I thought about what it would even mean to talk to my father. What would I say? You hurt me? He knew that. He had to. He was the one who said it, everyone wishes you'd just disappear. That sentence had become a turning point in my life. It was the moment I stopped hoping things would change. If I replied, would he want to apologize? Rebuild something? Pretend the past hadn't happened? Was this about Camille? Did he want me to come see her? Was it about guilt? About absolution? I didn't know. And I didn't know if I cared. And still, the guilt lingered. Not guilty for leaving. That decision saved my life. But guilt that maybe, just maybe, I had become so good at surviving alone that I'd forgotten how to consider another way. That evening, I finally said something to Nico. Got a letter, I mumbled, staring out the window. He was peeling sweet potatoes at the counter. He didn't look up, just said, from them? I nodded. Are you thinking about writing back? I don't know, I said. I don't even know if I can. He placed the blade down and wiped his hands on a dish towel. You don't have to. And if you do, you don't have to say everything. You could just say what feels okay to say. I'm not angry anymore, I said quietly. But I don't feel anything either. Not for them. Not even pity. That's okay too, he replied. Sometimes people show up too late, and there's just nothing left. We ate dinner in silence that night, but not the tense kind. The kind where someone is keeping you company even when you're lost in your head. I kept thinking about Camille. Rehab. I wondered what for, drugs? Alcohol? Both? I imagined her in one of those sterile, white-walled places, being forced to confront the version of herself she'd never been held accountable for. I wondered if she'd ever thought about me. If she remembered what she said that day. If she even knew I left for good. Another week passed. I found myself drafting replies in my head. Thanks for letting me know. Hope Camille's getting help. I'm glad Mom's okay. But I never wrote them. I wasn't ready to open that door, not even a crack. Because once you open it, they walk in with all their history, all their expectations, all their blind spots. And I'd worked too hard to build a life where I didn't feel small anymore. Instead, I focused on my work. We were prepping for a big shoreline restoration project, something I'd been leading for months. I poured myself into it, and for a while, the letter faded into the background. But at night, when things got quiet, I could feel it pulling at me again. Not because I wanted to go back. But because I needed to decide what, if anything, I was still willing to carry. I started rereading the letter again. It wasn't long, just a few sentences, but the wording stuck with me. Especially one part, I regret a lot. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't full of flowery apologies or emotional appeals. But that line circled my brain like water circling a drain. Was it a real regret? Or just guilt now that things had started to fall apart? I've learned that people rarely change because they want to be better for you. They change because something in their own lives crumbles. And maybe that was happening for my father. Maybe he wasn't writing because he missed me. Maybe he was writing because the center of their world, Camille, had fallen apart. Because Mom was suddenly fragile. Because the house of cards had collapsed and I was the only one left who hadn't already burned down with them. Still, I didn't throw the letter away. I thought back to when I was 12 and Camille had poured orange soda over my science project the night before the school fair. I had worked for days on that papier-mâché model of the solar system, painting each planet with tiny, careful details. I cried, begging my parents to punish her. Instead, they told me I was too sensitive and that Camille probably didn't mean it. She laughed when I had to bring the soggy mess to school. The teacher gave me a B out of pity. My classmates didn't care. And I remember thinking that day, this is how the world is. Some people get away with it. Some people just watch. It was around that time I started keeping to myself. Stopped expecting justice. Stopped expecting anyone to show up for me. Now, all these years later, I had created a quiet life where things made sense. Where people didn't lie to my face and call it love. Where someone like Nico didn't try to fix me, just held my hand and made space beside him. And yet, there was still that quiet tug. That annoying little whisper at night, what if they really do regret it? One afternoon, I called an old friend from college, Mel, someone who had seen a bit more of my family dynamic than most. She was a social psych major back then, always dissecting people in the most compassionate way. She was the one who, after my graduation, pulled me aside and said, "You don't have to go to dinner with them. That's not love. That's control." We hadn't spoken in a while, but she picked up right away. After some catching up, I told her about the letter. There was a pause. Then, "That's heavy." "Yeah. Do you want to respond?" "I don't know." "Well. Do you want to talk to them?" "Not what you think you should do. But deep down, do you want to talk to them?" I thought about it. Really thought. "No," I said quietly. "I think I just want to understand why I don't want to." "That makes perfect sense," she replied. "Closure doesn't always come from conversations. Sometimes it comes from clarity." I thanked her, and we hung up. I didn't feel better, but I did feel a little less crazy. In the weeks that followed, I became more introspective than I'd been in years. Things I hadn't thought about in a long time started bubbling up. Like when I got pneumonia in high school and asked for help getting to the doctor. My mom told me to stop exaggerating and suggested I walk to the urgent care down the street. I did. Alone. With a fever of 103. Or the Christmas when Camille got a new phone, and I got a single envelope with $20 in it and a card that wasn't even signed. Or the time my dad forgot my name when introducing us to a neighbor. He said, "And this is our other daughter." I remembered all of it. And I realized something important: they had already let me go long before I ever walked away. All these memories, all these moments, they weren't isolated. They were patterns. Choices. And not just by Camille, but by my parents. They chose to make me feel invisible. They chose to excuse her behavior, over and over again. And I had spent most of my life trying to earn what should have been given freely: basic love and respect. So when my dad wrote that he regretted a lot, what exactly did he mean? Did he regret what happened? Or did he regret the consequences? I didn't know. And I wasn't sure I needed to know anymore. But the thought of Camille being in rehab sat weirdly with me. Not because I pitied her, exactly, but because I knew what it was like to be broken and alone. And despite everything, she was still the girl I grew up with. The girl who once shared a bunk bed with me. The girl who used to cry during thunderstorms and sneak into my side of the bed until she stopped needing me altogether. I didn't owe her anything. But I couldn't pretend the ache didn't exist either. One night, I found myself standing in the hallway, staring at the little corkboard by the door where we kept random notes, receipts, postcards from places we'd hiked. I pinned the letter there, right in the center. Not because I planned to answer it, but because I wanted to remember, this happened. It was real. I wasn't imagining their absence. I wasn't overreacting. Nico saw it the next morning and gave me a small nod. Nothing more. He got it. I hadn't decided what I'd do yet. Maybe I never would. But I was learning something new, something I never knew as a kid in that cold, quiet house. I was allowed to be angry. I was allowed to be indifferent. I was allowed to protect my peace, even if no one else had ever protected me. It was around mid-October when the second letter came. This time, it was from Camille. I hadn't expected that. Her handwriting was unmistakable, big loops, uneven pressure, a little chaotic, like her. There was no greeting. Just a folded piece of lined notebook paper with her familiar slanted scrawl. I know I don't deserve to write to you. I don't even know if you'll read this. But I wanted to say something, even if it's too late. I don't remember everything I said at your graduation, but I remember the look on your face. I think about that more than I want to. I've spent years pretending like nothing mattered, like I didn't care about anyone. But I did care. I just didn't know how to show it. Or maybe I was too used to being the center of everything. I'm in rehab for alcohol. And a bunch of other stuff I'm just starting to unpack. They make us write letters to people we hurt. You're the first one I wanted to write to. You didn't deserve what I did to you. You didn't deserve the way we treated you. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know, I see it now. I see you. It was short. Honest, in a weird, raw way. Not polished or edited. No signature, no love or from, just the letter, folded neatly, placed in an envelope with no return address. I read it 3 times and then left it on the same corkboard beside the first one. Later that day, I sat on the front steps with a mug of chamomile tea, watching the mist settle over the hills. It was quiet, like always. I thought about Camille's face when she was little, before all the mean nicknames and eye rolls. I remembered her teaching me how to braid hair, sharing her Halloween candy, crying when her goldfish died. There was a time, early on, when we were close. Before she learned it was okay to treat me the way she did. Before she figured out that being cruel didn't come with consequences, at least not in our house. That memory of her, the little girl, not the high school queen bee, hit me harder than I expected. The idea of her sitting in some rehab facility, writing letters to ghosts, made my chest tighten in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. I didn't know what to do with the letter. But it was strange. Something about it cracked open a space I hadn't realized I'd boarded up. I didn't talk to Nico about it at first. Not because I didn't want to, but because I needed to sit with it by myself. But that night, as we were brushing our teeth side by side, I finally said, "She wrote to me." He looked at me in the mirror. "Camille?" I nodded. "Do you want to talk about it?" "I don't know yet." "That's okay." He always said that. "That's okay." He didn't push. Didn't pry. He was the first person in my life who didn't treat silence like a problem to fix. I ended up staying up late that night, turning the letter over in my hands like it could offer me some kind of direction. I didn't know if I believed her. But I knew she hadn't written something like that before. Not even close. And maybe that was the point. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't enough. But it was different. The next morning, I pulled out an old shoebox of stuff I hadn't touched in years, scraps of photos, notebooks, journals I'd filled in college. I found an envelope marked "Mom, never sent" and another with "Camille, draft." Letters I'd written during my first year away. Pages and pages of unspoken thoughts I never had the courage to mail. I read through them and cried. Not loud, messy sobs. Just quiet tears that came slow and steady, like I'd finally let something out I didn't know I'd been holding. There was one letter to my dad I didn't even remember writing. Just a short note I must have scribbled sometime during sophomore year. "I got an award today. You'd probably be annoyed because I didn't tell you sooner. But I'm not telling you to impress you. I'm telling you because part of me still wants you to be proud. I don't know why. I guess old habits die hard. It's okay if you're not. I just thought maybe you should know." I stared at that one the longest. It was strange, how much power these people still held over me without even being here. Their absence had carved such deep grooves into my identity that I'd molded entire decisions around avoiding the shadows they left behind. That night, I left the shoebox open on the table and went to bed. A few days later, Nico and I were hiking one of our usual trails. It was cool and crisp, the kind of fall day that smelled like cedar and earth. We took a break at a lookout point and just stood there for a while, staring out at the trees. I think I'm going to write back, I said out of nowhere. To Camille? Yeah. Maybe not a lot. But something. Nico didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then, do it for you. Not for her. I know. We didn't talk much the rest of the way down. But I felt lighter, like I'd made a decision that had been waiting for me to catch up. When we got home, I sat at the table and pulled out a sheet of paper. I didn't overthink it. I didn't try to sound wise or composed. I just wrote. Camille, I got your letter. I don't know how I feel about it yet. But I read it. More than once. I appreciate you writing it. I'm glad you're getting help. I mean that. I'm not sure what will happen next. I'm still figuring that out. But I wanted you to know that I got it. That's all for now. I signed only my name. No return address. Just like hers. I didn't know what would come of it. I didn't even know if she was expecting a reply. But I mailed it the next day anyway. It didn't feel like closure. It didn't feel like forgiveness. It just felt like a breath. Like saying, I see you too. But I'm still here, and I'm still mine. Weeks passed, and I didn't hear back from Camille. I didn't really expect to. The rehab center probably filtered outgoing mail, or maybe she didn't know what to say next. But I didn't regret writing back. That little letter I sent, it wasn't about reconciliation. It was a marker. A moment I could look back on and say, that's when I stopped letting them live rent-free in my head. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. Maybe Camille would move on, maybe she wouldn't. Maybe my father's regret would be enough to haunt him quietly for the rest of his life. I didn't need to be involved in any of it. And then, just before the holidays, I got an email. Not a letter. Not a call. An email. From an unfamiliar address, but the name was unmistakable, Paul Whitman. My father. The subject line simply read, would you be willing to talk? My first instinct was to delete it. But I opened it. Your mother is in assisted living now. Camille is staying with me temporarily while she gets back on her feet. I've been trying to piece things together around here, but it's a mess. I found some of your old boxes in the attic, schoolwork, journals, art projects. I didn't realize how much I'd missed. I don't blame you if you never want to speak to me again. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to understand now. Even if it's too late. Camille told me you wrote back to her. She said it meant a lot. If you're open to it, I'd like to talk. No expectations. I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop. And I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because this man who had once looked at me on the biggest day of my life and said everyone wishes you'd just disappear, was now asking for my time, my attention, my emotional labor. It didn't make me angry. It made me feel in control. For the first time, I got to choose the tone. I got to choose the terms. So I did something I'd never done before. I planned a visit, not to reconcile. Not to return home. But to see, with my own eyes, what had become of the kingdom I'd once been exiled from. I told Nico. He offered to come with me, but I declined. This one's mine, I said. And he understood. So I drove down to Boise. Same streets. Same weird mix of comfort and unease. The house looked smaller, like childhood memories often do when you revisit them as an adult. The paint was peeling, the lawn a little overgrown. The once vibrant flower beds were empty. I knocked. The door creaked open. And there he was. My father looked tired. Smaller. His once proud shoulders sagged under a thin sweater. His hair was gray now, but not in the elegant way, more like it had faded from wear. Hi, he said, voice soft. Cautious. Hi, I replied, stepping inside. The house was quiet. Still smelled the same. A mix of lemon cleaner and something stale, like unopened drawers. Camille wasn't there, she was at a counseling group, apparently, but Dad invited me to sit down in the living room. The couch hadn't changed. Neither had the old framed photo of Camille's high school prom night above the fireplace. I didn't let the silence stretch too long. You said you wanted to talk. So talk. He sat opposite me, hands folded, like a kid in the principal's office. I'm not going to pretend I didn't screw up, he began. I was blind to a lot of things. Especially how much your mother and I let Camille run the show. How we made you feel invisible. I thought I was being fair. I see now I wasn't. He looked down at his hands. You were easy. Quiet. Self-sufficient. I mistook that for not needing anything. You didn't give me anything, I said, steady. You laughed at me. You stood there while she humiliated me. Over and over. I know, he whispered. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry. Even if it doesn't matter now. And there it was. Not a grand apology. Not a plea. Just a man sitting in the wreckage of what he helped create. I let the silence linger before I said, you're right. It doesn't change anything. But you said what you came to say. He nodded. Then I stood. You still have those boxes? I asked. He pointed toward the hallway. Closet near the attic. I found them. 3 dusty boxes marked J. Inside, my old notebooks, art projects, spelling bee ribbons, a science fair certificate from 8th grade, the year Camille destroyed my project. He had kept it. It had a soda stain on the bottom corner. He had kept it anyway. I gathered everything into a bag. I'm going now, I said as I stepped back into the living room. But thank you for letting me see this place one last time. Do you think we'll ever speak again? He asked. I smiled, not cruel, just matter of fact. That's not up to you anymore. And then I left. Camille emailed me a week later. She was moving into a halfway house and said she was working part-time at a nonprofit. Irony of ironies, it was one that worked with youth mental health. She said she wasn't sure she was ready to see me, but hoped someday I'd let her try. I didn't reply. Instead, I looked up the nonprofit and made a donation in someone else's name. Charcoal, I typed in the "in honor of" section. Because if she remembered it, I wanted her to think about who I'd become, someone who turned ashes into fuel. Back in Bellingham, I framed the soda-stained certificate and hung it in my home office. It sits above my desk now. People sometimes ask why I'd frame something so damaged. I tell them it's a reminder, I made something beautiful, even when no one believed I could. That's my revenge. Not screaming, not fighting, not even forgiving. Just thriving. Quietly. Fully. Without them.